Life doesn't have meaning without aspiration or an aim. Okay, so you need a hierarchy of values. There's got to be something at the top. It's got to be something important. If you don't have that, your life doesn't have any meaning. So if you criticize the hierarchy, or even the idea of hierarchy, you destroy the idea of aspiration. And then people have nothing. Well, that's not helpful. People are built for a struggle and they're built for a weight, and you want to take on a heavy burden voluntarily. See if you can put yourself together. See what you can do out in the world while you're waiting to die. It's an all-in game. It better be worthwhile. And so there's a tight relationship between responsibility and aspiration and hierarchy. And when you criticize those things, you get rid of the aspiration. You need a meaning to sustain you through the vicissitudes of life. Okay, well, try to debate that. It's like, is life painful? Yes. Is it anxiety-provoking? Yes. Is it uncertain? Yes. Is it painful beyond bearing sometimes? Yes. It's difficult. Everyone agrees about that. Now, they might disagree about how difficult, but that doesn't matter. That the central point holds. Okay, what if you think that's all pointless? Well, that doesn't seem very helpful. Okay, so you need a sustaining meaning. Well, where do you find that? Well, you generally find it in responsibility to yourself and to other people. Something that I learned, for example, from Jean Piaget, he called that an equilibrated state. And an equilibrated state is like a game that everyone wants to play. And so if you set your household up properly, then it's a game that everybody is participating in voluntarily. And that's going to be predicated on the desire for peace and the willingness to speak truth and the ability to take responsibility. So that has to be part of your higher order moral aim. And then when you're having a difficult discussion with someone, the discussion is going to be affected by that higher order moral aim. It's not going to be contaminated to the same degree by your desire to inflict pain and attain victory and, crush your opponent and punish them for their previous sins and indicate your disappointment in things they've done over the years and all of that. As the negative emotion ramps up in intensity, the amount of time that you construe as manageable shrinks. And if you're extremely depressed and anxious, then, you may be struggling to get through the day. And then you need a map of what is going to constitute a minimally acceptable day. And that might be one where you've done what you need so that when you wake up tomorrow, things aren't worse, right? You have to keep up with your obligations and your duties at least enough so that you're not degenerating downhill. One of the things I learned really a lot from reading Russian neuropsychology, strangely enough, the Russians had great neuropsychologists, was that the sense of meaning, the sense of engagement that characterizes life when life is progressing in the manner that you would like it to progress is actually an instinct. It's not a cognitive phenomenon. It's not a second-order consequence of thought. It's way deeper than that. It's an extraordinarily profound instinct. And so that's really worth thinking about, assuming, as you might, that we're adapted creatures and that our instincts guide us in the world so that we can survive and so that we can reproduce and so that we can exist over long periods of time. The fact that an instinct of that depth exists and that it's associated with the sense of vital engagement in being, let's say, is a good indication, as good an indication as there is, that there's something truly real about it. And I would say that might even be more important than the knowledge of the role that the serotonin system plays in adjudicating hierarchical position. Because, we tend to think of meaning as something that people create as a secondary consequence through thinking or through philosophy or something like that. And when we think that, it's easy to criticize it. It's easy to become cynical about it. It's easy to lose faith in it. But when you understand that it actually is a much deeper phenomenon than that, and that the cognitive elements, the philosophical elements, are sort of like, they're like the fronds on the top of the pond on a plant system that has unbelievably deep roots that go way down into the water. There's something about that that's much firmer and more solid. And I think the evidence that meaning is an instinct, a deep, deep instinct, is overwhelming. I don't think that popular knowledge has caught up with that. I mean, the research it's not new, but it's been done, I would say, in the main in the last 30 years or so, and mostly by psychobiologists, like people who are really on the hard science end of psychology. And their work is difficult. It's technically difficult. It involves a lot of neurobiology, neuroanatomy, psychopharmacology. It's hard work. It's hard going, but it's unbelievably useful. That's rule 7. Do what is meaningful, not what is expedient, because meaning is an instinct. And meaning is the instinct that guides you in life across the totality of life, right? What's expedient, that's what you might want to do right now in an impulsive sense, right? Because you're driven forward by, anger or anxiety or frustration or disappointment or despair, some sort of one-eyed motivational monster that's got you in its grip that really isn't considering everything at once, right? Like considering your life tomorrow or your life next week or your family's life or maybe even your well-being half an hour from now, because you lash out in anger, and people do that. It's understandable. Sometimes it's even necessary, but it's not wise generally. And the instinct for meaning seems to be consequence of the integration of all of those underlying motivations and emotions with social being, and then the manifestation of something like the proper pathway forward. And you need that because you need to know how to move forward in life, because you need to move forward in life. You need to act in life. And the other thing that's, I suppose, part and parcel of, let's say, 12 rules for life is the insistence upon action as of primary import. We're not fundamentally creatures who passively perceive the objective world. That's not the goal of our perceptual systems. It's not the goal of our memory. The reason that you have memories isn't to remember the past. The reason you have memories is so that if something bad happened to you in the past, you can figure out what it was that was bad, and you can figure out why it happened, and then you can not do it again in the future. Right? It's very practical, and it's the same on the positive end of the spectrum. If good things happen to you in the past, then conceivably duplicating whatever you did to get those good things to happen could have them happen again in the future. So it's practical memory, and it's oriented towards action, and it's oriented towards like the quality of your life.
If you could recommend one book to everybody, and you can't say your own 12 rules for life, which one would you?
Man's Search for Meaning is pretty good, Viktor Frankl.
Man's Search for
Meaning.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's not very long. It's pretty accessible. It's deep. It's fundamentally accurate, I would say. It's a profound. own book. And every